Hello and welcome to Cold Reads. I am your host, Laura Nicole of Resonant Audiobook Solutions. By day, I'm doing some exciting stuff in social media and also an administrative assistant. And by night, I have my business. And clearly, I am not following my own rules, and I had some speakers on. Oops. Sorry about that.
Busted.
You guys are laughing at me, but it's fine. Everything's fine. It's fine. Happy belated Thanksgiving to everybody who's watching in the States. Otherwise, happy Friday, everybody. I know this is outside of my normal schedule, but the U.S. had a holiday, and I decided I was going to eat some turkey. Damn it! And I'm ready for the holidays. Jack Skellington is adorned, and he makes me happy. And with me today, I have two of my favorite voices in the entire known universe. Well, my known universe. And I met them both at Balticon. They make me super happy, and I'm happy to have them both on the show for the first time. So we'll start with Dave Robeson. Hello.
Hello, Laura. And may I say the feeling is mutual, dear. You make us equally happy, and it's a delight to share even virtual space with you.
Oh, I love you too. Make sure you tell Terry that too.
Absolutely. I will send her this way, by golly. Because she will agree. She will definitely concur.
Fantastic. Well, tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Well, how much time do we have? No, we'll keep this brief. Basically, I'm a podcaster, a vocal narrator and performer, and I'm also the creator of Archivos, the story development and presentation tool for today's storytellers. That is the broad scope of who and what I am. I've performed for the Drabblecast, the complete trifecta, or what's four with a trifecta? Because there's four now.
I don't know. I have no idea.
I don't know either, but it's the four podcasts for Escape Pod, or for escape artists rather. Podcastle, Pseudopods, Escape Pod, and Cast of Wonders. I've read for all of them multiple times, and I've also done some audiobooks out there in the world. And then on the Archivos Podcast Network, it's basically brainstorming. We interview authors and then bring writers on to pitch a story idea and brainstorm the heck out of it. And then, of course, Archivos is a story development app for writers, gamers, genealogists. A whole raft of individuals can make use of that. So that's me in a nutshell.
Really? All right. That's an interesting image. And now we go to the second Lord of Darkness.
Lord of Darkness.
Mostly because he's sitting in darkness. And if I call him the first Lord of Darkness, Sigler will come and kill me. Probably. So, but I am happy to have on my dear friend, Paul E. Cooley. Hi, Paul.
Hello, Laura. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Paul E. Cooley. I'm the Parsec Award-winning douchebag author of The Black and the Derelict Saga. I can't even speak today. I'm also the co-host of the Dead Robot Society writing podcast, where we help writers figure out how they're going to get published, where to get published, best ways to hone their craft and everything else. And you can also listen to my weekly podcast at shadowpublications.com, where I basically podcast everything that I write for free.
Yay!
You're a saint. You're not the Dark Lord. You're a generous soul.
Such a liar.
So I'm super excited to have you guys here, as I usually go fangirl on everybody. So as I've stated before, we all know each other from Balticon. It's a great convention where for new media types, especially, we've got podcast authors, we've got voice actors, novelists, audio drama people, people like me who edit audio, because I'm kind of stepping away from the voice acting role, really. And
Slacker.
It's kind of weird. What? What did you say?
I said slacker.
Nah, I got Reaper open right now. You want to go? Let's go.
I got Reaper. You want to go?
You've got Reaper open. I've got Logic Pro open. What's your point?
Yeah, my point is that I'm working right after this. Anyway, so I did put out a writing prompt a couple of weeks ago about you meet the strangest people in elevators. And to celebrate my new job, I took myself out for a nice meal and I started to write because I haven't done it in a while. And I thought about what is some of the strange things that I've seen in elevators. It usually happens at a convention. And then it reminded me of a very strange event a couple of years ago. There was a book release, a book that no longer exists, but it was a book release that was quite memorable, along with the outfit of one Paul E. Cooley that was given to him by his fans.
Outfit? What? I have no idea what you could be referring to. I have no idea.
Well, dude, we're gonna describe it in this story that I wrote just for you.
Oh, good. This couldn't possibly embarrass me whatsoever.
It will be wonderful. Now, I will state that while this is based on a true costume, the other likenesses are
purely coincidental.
And the rest of these events did not happen.
These events are fictitious. The characters and people represented here are not real people. Any similarity between this and actual licensed properties or people is purely coincidental.
Laura, I just want to go on the record saying I hate you.
Well, you have lied to me, sir. You said I was in your graveyard. I checked your graveyard. I am not in there.
What? How are you not in there?
I am not in your graveyard, sir.
Oh, well, let me make a note of that right freaking now. But Laura,
make sure Laura dies a horrible death.
Kill her horribly.
I was gonna say after you go through this, you'll be motivated to.
Exactly.
Maybe.
All right. You'll be in the graveyard tonight.
Great. That's all I ever wanted was to be killed in one of your books.
Well,
anyway, so without further ado, are both of you ready?
Yes.
Great. So I'm going to go ahead, as always, and share the document on the screen. And we will go ahead and start with Stranger Elevator by Laura Nicole. It was a long reception, and Sharon was ready to get cut out of her bridesmaid's dress and go to bed. The hotel where they were having the reception was also playing host to a science fiction convention, which had made for some interesting wedding crashers. Several superheroes, a T-Rex, and a steampunk cowboy had joined in the conga line when it spilled out into the hotel's hallway. They were all invited back into the party and took memorable photos with the bride and groom. But now it was past midnight, and Sharon's feet were killing her. She pressed the button to go up and waited. The hall was quiet, save for distant laughter from conference rooms. She guessed there were still some panels going on into the early morning. The elevator chimed and opened. She allowed the scantily clad space princess and her video game counterpart to exit before she entered and leaned against its cold walls.
Hold the elevator.
Paul. Quit it.
Quit what?
This is you, dude.
Use your voice.
My voice. I have a voice?
You. A Texan accent called from down the hall. Sharon heard the rustling of fabric, so she knew it would be a spectacle that joined her. While pressing the hold doors button, she peeked out through them. A tall man with long salt and pepper hair approached. His all-black outfit might not have been remarkable, save for the rainbow tulle wrapped around him like a spiraling tutu, and green fuzzy monster slippers on his feet. He got in and slouched against the other side of the elevator. "What floor?" Sharon asked.
Oh, I'm going to the basement. Go on up to your floor and I'll ride this thing back down afterward.
The elevator doors closed, and Sharon couldn't help but be mesmerized by the gruff man's sparse but bright outfit. "I've seen a lot of costumes today, but I don't recognize yours," she said, making conversation.
Yeah, well, I released a book this weekend and my fans told me I had to wear this getup. Thought it was funny, so I went along with it. Plus, I'm drunk enough.
The man chuckled.
Sure he is.
Another voice said. It was so quiet, Sharon didn't know if she'd actually heard it. "Sounds like a good party," she smiled. Something about the slippers drew her eye again.
So, what are you dressed as, if I don't mind asking?
The man asked, pulling her attention back up to his face. "Oh, I was a bridesmaid at the wedding in the garden room."
I heard about that on Twitter. Y'all got some hilarious pictures.
He pulled out his phone and showed her one of the images of the superheroes protecting the bride from the T-Rex. They both shared a laugh at that.
Oh, I'm Paul, by the way.
"Sharon." She shook his hand, and it occurred to her that the elevator was moving pretty slowly. "So, what's going on in the basement?" she asked pointedly, not looking at Paul's slippers.
There's a podcaster pajama party tonight. We usually have some kind of formal gathering for all of us that have been on panels.
"Oh?" Sharon asked, her curiosity piqued.
Yeah, there's so much going on that we all really don't get too much opportunity to kick back and just relax. So this party is our chance to have a good time.
Paul explained.
Plus, there's Tuaka.
The other voice said. Where was it coming from? "Did you say something?" Sharon asked. Paul shook his head.
Nope.
Sharon rubbed her eyes. "Must be exhaustion then. I thought I heard something about Tuaka." He smiled, and his eyes fluttered a bit at the sound of the word.
Ah, Tuaka. A bit rough at first, but tasty, especially if chilled properly.
It seemed as if he were savoring the memory of its taste. He came out of his reverie then.
If you want, you can come to the party and I'll get you some to try.
Come on.
The other voice said.
Just for one drink. It could be entertaining.
Did the voice just chuckle? Before she realized what she was saying, Sharon heard the words fly from her mouth. "Well, I do have some awesome bridal party pajamas that would be a shame to waste." They arrived at her floor, and Paul and his slippers waited at the elevator for her. That immediately made her a bit more comfortable with her choice. Probably just someone who likes to make sure everyone is having a good time. When she arrived back at the elevator, she was dressed in her dark blue onesie covered in gold stars, with a flask of bourbon that was left over from the bachelorette party tucked in her pocket.
Told you she would come back.
The voice was there again, apparently not providing commentary just to Sharon.
Shh,
Paul said before looking up at her. Sharon quirked an eyebrow at him. "Are you a ventriloquist, or is there a microphone in your slippers?" She smiled as they got into the elevator. "Either way, it's a neat trick." The elevator doors closed behind them.
Nah, honey.
The slippers said.
I'm just very interesting.
Where did my fans get you from?
Paul asked as Sharon hit the button for the ground floor. Then she remembered that they were going to the basement and pressed the B button 3 times for good measure.
Your buddy, Pondy.
The slippers laughed.
And man, are we going to have a stinking good time.
They continued to cackle. Paul looked up at Sharon with what seemed to be concern in his eyes.
I don't like this.
The elevator shuddered.
I don't like this at all.
The elevator doors opened, and refuse of all kinds poured into the elevator. Sharon shrieked and jumped back, standing next to Paul. The slippers were still laughing, and under the garbage that was piling up around them, they could hear the slippers humming a little ditty to the tune of a show tune.
Trash, glorious trash, filth high as a mountain.
There seemed to be no end to the avalanche of dirty towels, empty canisters, rotten food peels, and other unmentionables. As suddenly as it began, the elevator doors started to close, and the stream of refuse ceased. There was a ding and a shudder, but rather than moving up or down, the walls of the already small elevator started closing in on them.
Get on top of it,
Paul said, pushing Sharon up by her hips. I'm trying, she yelled back. Once she took hold of a long metal rod that apparently went to the floor, she grabbed Paul's arm and brought him up another 6 inches. Their heads were brushing the top of the elevator. Sharon looked up and saw that the top hatch did not have a lock or screws securing it, just a latch. Throwing the latch open, she pushed upward, but a great weight was holding the hatch door in place. Don't just stand there, she called to Paul. Help me. Paul flinched, a pained expression on his face.
Something's biting my ankles.
The pained look turned to panic as he sunk into the trash. The walls of the elevator pressed in and down, forcing their heads into the muck and refuse.
I'm sorry.
Was the last thing... Sorry. God, it's like Balticon all over again. Okay, hang on.
We broke everybody.
I'm sorry. Was the last thing Paul was able to mutter before they were pulled under. Sharon closed her eyes and took a deep breath to push the fear away. She lunged through the condensing trash, looking for where she thought the elevator door and buttons would be. Her hands reached out through the slime, jagged edges, and a head of hair? She hoped that was Paul's head. Her hands brushed the metal wall, and she felt another arm searching as hers was. She guided Paul's hand to the wall, and they both pushed any and all buttons frantically. Ding! The elevator doors opened into a hallway in front of a retro-looking diner. Dance music thrummed through the floor. Sharon and Paul tumbled out onto the garishly colored carpet and looked around. Sharon expected to be surrounded by a sea of trash, but found the carpet that they landed on impeccably clean. Her hair was disheveled and her onesie was filthy. It couldn't have been a dream. Then she looked at Paul. His slippers were gone, but his salt and pepper hair had been replaced with a sickly, slime-covered mats of green fur. He looked at her with cold, Muppet-like eyes and said,
So, Tuwaka?
Yay!
Woo!
Oh, God, that's so awesome.
I broke y'all with the I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, So, backstory. Last Balticon, Paul and I were on a panel with the Mythwits doing a read of something. Actually, Dave, were you part of that too?
I think he was.
At last Balticon?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I was there.
Okay, so we were all there. And it was supposed to be a World War II zombie apocalypse thing.
Yeah.
We were French.
We were French. We were very
Jeez.
French.
You were French. I was Texan.
Yeah.
and it was supposed to be very tense, very scary. That is not how we read it.
No, that is
There
not
were
how we read it
so-
at all.
There were
Didn't happen
so
that way.
many innuendos, and we broke so often. I'm pretty sure that episode will not make the light of day because we're all laughing through it.
Well, it was late. We were half in the bag. What'd you expect?
That's right.
You were half in the bag.
I was pretty sober at that point, actually.
So was I. I laugh more when I'm sober. When I'm drunk, I get very sleepy, and so I'm less responsive.
There's a certain festive, inebriated air that permeates Balticon. As soon as you cross the threshold, you're a little drunk for the whole
You're
weekend.
a little drunk on adrenaline.
Yeah. And people and awesomeness. It's a heady drink.
Especially
It's
when talking to
true.
Dave Robeson, because that usually gets your creative mind like
Like
And you
in
start
overdrive.
creativity.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
start wishing you had a TARDIS because you need more time. Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel you, brother. I do that to
need
myself.
a time turner.
Yeah, time
Um,
turner. There you go.
There you go.
So from my perspective as the writer, I really hate that narrator chick. She just screwed this whole thing up.
She did awesome. What are you talking? She was great.
Apparently, I also write tongue twisters into my stories without realizing it, and then I'm
Laura-
like, meh.
Laura, and I'm sure Dave can speak to this too, narrating audiobooks. When you're an author and you're looking at your own words and you have to pronounce them, I have to go back and change like probably a sentence, a chapter, because I can't speak it.
Yep. Well, I
have
mean,
to change it.
the start of this show, the first 32 episodes of the show was me doing cold reads of Stonebriar case files and figuring that stuff out.
Yeah,
Wow.
it is a completely different ball game when you have to figure out how the hell am I going to pronounce this bullshit.
Yeah.
Well, and if you don't do an audible editorial pass, even if you're not planning on making it an audible book, but reading your words out loud will reveal all manner of strangeness that doesn't show up if you're just reading it with your eyes.
Absolutely.
It's very true, and that's why I do that with blog posts and other kinds of social media that I'm now putting out professionally. I have to read it aloud so that it makes sense when I hear it back to myself.
So I'm guessing you didn't read this one out loud before you tossed it out into the world.
It's a cold read, Dave. What?
Even for the author.
Full disclosure, I finished writing this at 11 a.m.
You're fired. You are so fired.
And then I would like to give two shout outs for this story. The first is for my friend Denise Lehman. She does amazing illustrations in a thing called Layman's Terms on Instagram. And she gave me some of the idea of doing the trash compactor spoof. And
she's a sick puppy.
And I love her.
God love her.
And then secondly, at 11:30, I texted your beloved editor, Susan Baiman, and said, Sue, I have this short story that I wrote for Cooley. Do you have time to review it today? And she did. And it was awesome. So I want to give them both a shout out. And Sue Baiman, you can find her on her website at myeditorisSue.com. which is a very clever name, and I like it.
And she also does chocolatescotch.com, which has some fabulous creative endeavors on there.
Fantastic.
Oh,
So, as voice actors, what did you both think of this story? We'll go into your personal feelings on it in a minute, Mr. Cooley.
The only thing more terrifying than the idea of my own effed up slippers that my patrons give me every freaking year is the fact that they would talk in Dave Robison's voice. That very idea is more terrifying to me than you could possibly imagine, because it makes my schizophrenia seem so, I don't know, pedestrian.
All right, patrons, reach out to me before you get Paul's slippers this year. I'll record some stuff that's pressure triggered, so every time he walks, I'll release some bon mot.
I would pay an inordinate amount, a shameful amount of money to have that happen, where every time I walked around, Dave Robison would be narrating my life as I'm walking around in my grouch slippers. That would be the high point of my life right there. I could die happy.
Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Cooley, step.
Left
God,
step,
you look great
right
today. Step.
I hate you, revolting human.
Is it going to be like one of those? It's going to be like one of those things where it's got 15 things that it says every time you step on it.
Yeah, pretty much.
But you've got to have a break, a 5-step break in between each. Otherwise,
well, what we need to do is it would need to be context appropriate. So, in other words, Dave's voice would have to lurk in the shadows until a certain situation happened, like walking onto an elevator, before making very inappropriate comments.
No, okay, so here's how it would work. You know how they used to have the boot knives?
Yeah.
And so you would have that kind of a trigger thing where you would trigger it with a certain kick, and then it would talk.
Well, and if it's Wi-Fi enabled, it could download updated quotes and so on. You could buy packages of audio.
I'm the horror writer, and you're scaring me. Stop it.
Apparently, we do have a viewer in the chat, and it's my dad. Hi, Dad.
Hey, Dad.
And
sorry,
my dad says, I love the show and I miss both of your guests. My dad showed up to Balticon 2 years ago. He was the pirate.
Yes,
I remember.
It
was memorable.
Come this Balticon, we'll be there.
Well, if you can sneak him into your luggage, he's not far from you.
Oh, really,
Mr. Cooley? Yeah. We'll talk about it off air.
All right,
but yeah, I'd love to have him. Dave, what did you think?
I enjoyed it, obviously, to be able to give voice to an iconic character. Although I'm sure I didn't quite do full service, as fans of the street will know. I would have loved more lines, honestly, but I think in the context, but that's, of course, it's me. I want more lines. I'm a greedy voice actor. But I think in the context of the length of the piece, I think it was perfect. I think it was a nice, brisk progression. The various vocal components supported the story that you were telling, and it led to a very satisfying conclusion that, Paul, you picked up on brilliantly. So yes, I'm digging it all the way across the board.
Yes, I'm very excited that you picked up on it, because I wasn't really sure how I was going to end it, if you guys were going to go into the party or not. But I thought that was a nice way that Oscar would end his stories. His stories always end with Tuaka.
Why does this character have such a hold on the zeitgeist? I don't get it. It's because it's a bit of our childhood perverted so that we can enjoy him again as adults. Perverted. It's not perverted. It's just the natural progression.
I mean, we might see it in a couple of years. Big Bird's gonna need some seed to keep it separated.
Gotta keep it separated. Yeah, I think Oscar does need to, sing a
Oscar
song.
needs his own adult show. Oscar PI.
Oh my God! The
Oscar needs show. Oscar needs show. Ha!
Oh, the freaking lawsuits. Oh, God,
no,
man.
you just hook up. You hook up with PBS and you say, "Hey, I want to do this show for your adult community audience."
Yeah, and then Disney sues me into the lower levels of hell. Not that they can get much at this point, but still.
Anyway, I love the street. I still love the street. I might or might not still have my copy of all the audio that you had to take down. I may or may not have gotten a book for my brother-in-law who adores it.
There may or may not still be copies sitting on my bookshelf that will be handed out at some point. There may or may not be.
I'm just saying, it will be just after my 1-year anniversary of Resonant Moon by the time you see me next.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we've digressed. I would like to give each of my guests an opportunity to pimp their stuff. And since we started with Dave, we're going to end with Paul first. Paul, where can people find you online, and what are you currently working on that you can tell us about?
You can find me at shadowpublications.com. Of course, I'm all over Amazon. I am the Persec Award-winning author of The Black. And my new series, Derelict, the Derelict Saga. The third book should be coming out in January. I have a new book coming out next month called Gare's Inferno, which is a procedural, how do I describe this? It is a detective procedural book about an arson inspector who finds out that there may be an arsonist who may be possessed by a Nephilim from ancient Mesopotamia. That should be coming out next month.
Okay, cool.
Is that connected to the Garagaverse at all, Paul?
I refuse to answer that question. I refuse to answer that question.
All right. Okay. That's your prerogative. You can take the fifth on that.
We do have a question from the chat because my dad's awesome and will ask me questions. And he says, I am afraid to ask about the real costume that Cooley was wearing in the elevator. So, Dave, I'm going to let you pimp your stuff, and I'm going to find that picture. I'm a terrible human being.
And you keep careful records of all your horribleness. Yes.
Actually, awesome. No, Facebook does it for me.
Well, yes.
Exactly. Facebook does all the nasty for her.
Well, I'm Dave Robison. You can find all of the general things that I'm doing out at my studio website, wonderthingstudios.com. You can find Archivos at archivos.digital. Not .com, not .org, ARCHIVOS.digital. That'll hook you up with some introductory videos, some how-tos and FAQs, and some other gateway drugs into the most fabulous story development and presentation tool that has hit the interwebs in a long, long time.
And if you're a creator, you should definitely check it out.
It's
bam. What he said. So, and also you can find me on Twitter at Writers Podcast and also at Archivos Stories. Those are my two Twitter handles. And of course, Archivos Stories on Facebook and Dave Robison on Facebook. That's all of my stuffs.
Fantastic. And I have found the picture.
Okay.
So ladies and gentlemen,
whoa!
This is the outfit that inspired this story.
My eyes, they're bleeding.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay.
Yeah, that was a good time.
It was a great awesome time. I got to be there for that. I'm always excited when people have big events and I get to be there and I can say I was there.
Yes.
So yeah, and oh yeah, I'm supposed to say my stuff now.
Yes,
please.
So you can find me online at resonantmoon.com. I've got a blog that I restarted as of yesterday. I've got all my services for audio. I do podcasts and audiobooks. I make them better. And that's really
Yay.
that's the
We
most
need it. We need
concise
the
way I
help.
can say that. And you can follow me on Twitter at L Nicole Audio. I'm usually talking about cold reads, D&D, Critical Role, and that's it. Because I'm a nerd.
Well, all right then.
All right then.
Let it fly.
You can find Cold Reads and participate in the conversation on our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/group/Cold Reads. I will often have casting calls there very last minute because I like to do everything last minute with this show except for stories. If you would like to submit a story, if you have something that is 4 pages long or smaller, thank you, Dave. If you have something that is 4 pages long or shorter, please send me an email at my email is lauranicoleaudio@gmail.com. Resonant Moon also has a Facebook page, facebook.com/Resonant Moon. And this work is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 international license. That means you can download it, you can share it, you can retweet it, you can repost it. Just don't edit it, don't sell it, and leave it the way it is. It's perfect, just like you. Yes, you.
You don't know me very well.
Oh, Paul. Paul, I know you better than most people. Just say it.
Yeah,
it's true.
Unfortunately for you.
It's true.
I will use it until the day I die. Thank you all so much for joining us for Cold Reads. Thank you to my 2 guests. I hope you all will come back whenever you're free. I'd love to have you. And we will do this again in 1.5 Thursdays. Where's my calendar? Thursdays? I can tell you a date.
Somebody's not doing their job.
I'm not doing it. Whoever they are, they're fired. Okay, I won't be doing it in 2 Thursdays.
This is the laughter of
I'm gonna do
is what this is.
So I scratched that. My next show is going to be on December 14th. So please be sure to check back in with me then, and I will. Oh, it won't be on the 14th. Damn it! Why do I have to have a day
for new details and information to come?
This is like dealing with management. What's the deadline again?
December 1st. I'm saying December 1st. That's final. We'll do it live.
Perfect.
Sorry. I'm okay. Fine. Anyway. Thank you all so much for joining me on Cold Reads. I'm Laura Nicole. And without further ado, say goodnight, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Almost in sync. Good night.